All right, and we are live. Hello, my friends. My name is Evelyn Joy, and I'm here with the lovely Christina Garcia. She's famous. I know. No, just kidding.
Oh, no, definitely not.
I'm just kidding. I feel like I already know you because I've watched so many of your videos, but this is actually our first conversation, right?
Yeah,
So
so
thank
exciting to
you.
meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. So I'm sorry we're a couple minutes behind schedule, but here we are.
My
We're here.
fault.
That's
Tech
okay.
issues on my end.
That's all right. All right. The good thing is we're here.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I want to start off real quick before we get started. I want to shout out Christina's YouTube channel. She is Christina Garcia on YouTube. So I have this linked in the description box below. What kinds of things can people find on your YouTube channel, Christina?
Good question. All things online teacher related, basically. That's pretty much what I focus on is just how to better serve online teachers, to present opportunities that I've vetted for them, and just to kind of support and offer ideas and suggestions. So that's pretty much my channel in a nutshell.
Very good. Awesome. We have some people fangirling in the comments. I love it.
Oh goodness.
All right. So I'm also going to share your Instagram page.
Thank
So
you.
I was trying to find out more information about Storyhouse before interviewing you, and I found this fantastic interview with the founder of Storyhouse. So I would say, in this video, maybe we'll cover some of the stuff that they covered in that video, but I want to direct people to Christina's Instagram so that the founder himself can explain it better than we can, right? So
Absolutely.
we're going to talk about Storyhouse, but if you want to hear so much more details, watch this video right here. Yeah, so what can people find on your Instagram page?
So Instagram, I tend to do more with stories, and engaging with people in that way. I don't post as often as I think maybe I should. um, but yeah, I have, stories. I'll ask for people to share their stories, and just kind of support teachers in that way. I try to stay informed on big changes that are happening, and I try to inform the teachers in a timely manner. I am not tethered to Instagram by any means, or really any social media. So sometimes, it'll be a couple days before I actually get on there. But I do try when I know that there's something big to, make sure I'm supporting teachers the best that I can. So I would say sharing some tips, sharing any kind of events or announcements, that sort of thing would be on my Instagram. I tend to post more on Instagram than I post on YouTube, but YouTube tends to be more polished and more well thought out, I would say.
Awesome. I love your background, by the way. It's so colorful
Thank
and
you.
simple and fun. Very cool.
Thanks. My mom and I made it out of paper.
That's awesome. And it just
Yeah.
goes to show you can make a cool background and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. Just simple. Okay. So the first I wanted to do was shout out your YouTube channel and your Instagram.
Thank you.
And then second, introduce yourself. What did you do before online teaching and how long have you taught online?
Yeah. So I'm Christina Garcia. A lot of people here call me Teacher Tina. That was just what I first called myself in my first video on YouTube, and it just kind of stuck. So before I started teaching online, so just to back up a little bit, I graduated from college in 2014 with a degree in Spanish and K through 12 education. But I had a really awful student teaching experience, and it kind of scared me away. And I didn't know that online teaching was really a thing that people did at that time. So I just thought, well, I guess I'm not going to be a teacher. And I was pretty bummed about that. So at that time, I was kind of nannying for a bunch of different families in Spanish for the year before I got married. After that, I actually got into management positions in the plasma industry, like blood plasma donation, which is super random. But it gave me lots of really good experience with leadership, with customer service, with time management, because it's very chaotic in that field. And I just learned a lot, and it really strengthened my husband and my marriage as well. So anyway, that kind of made me realize that I really liked working with adults as well and kind of supporting them in reaching their goals. And then when my husband and I moved, we decided, I would check out teaching online. I was looking for job postings. I was like, I really want to get back into teaching, but I don't want to be in a classroom. And then I saw an ad for VIPKid and I was like, interesting. So anyway, that kind of started me in the online teaching space with VIPKid. And then since then, I've kind of, dabbled with other companies and trying to support teachers in whichever companies they're interested in. There have been a few that I've focused primarily on over the years, but kind of all in that online teaching space. And so I've kind of shifted, like, yes, I still teach some students, but I would say I more so have my hands in helping those teachers to teach their students. So that's a little bit about my background. So Spanish education turned management, turned online education, just kind of rolling with the punches with it all, really.
Very good. Awesome. Okay. So pivot is the theme of the week.
Right?
Diversify and pivot are the things I
Yes.
keep talking about on my channel because of current situations in China and regulations that are affecting the jobs of many, many teachers. Teachers at Wales English and at GoGoKid have already lost their jobs. At Magic Ears and at VIPKid, we're seeing a lot less work hours and a possibility of maybe no future paychecks coming soon, right? So what I'm trying to do on my channel is share the facts, not hearsay, as far as what's going on. And then also hope and options. And so in doing that, I've been, every single time I hear of someone that's making an income from home, teaching online or doing something creative or whatever it is, if it's a teacher or whoever, I'll ask them, can I interview you to find out more about that so that I can share the information. Now, something that's happening right now is a lot of teachers are beginning to get creative and even create their own platforms. And one thing I say is you may not have to reinvent the wheel if someone else has already done it for you. Now, in watching your interview with Matthew, I'm hearing that if you're creating your own platform, there's a lot of fire hoops you have to jump through, and it might be wiser to find a platform that's already worked out all the bugs and difficulties.
Yeah.
And maybe Storyhouse English might be that for you, or maybe something else. But I'm just sharing this information, helping get it out there so that the right teachers will get connected with your platform. Now, your platform is a smaller startup. When I say you're not Matthew's the founder,
Not
right?
the founder, but
You're
early adopter.
you're one of the first 5 teachers, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. So instead of me doing all the talking, how about what can you tell me about Storyhouse English and what it is?
Yeah. Well, let me just say I love that you want teachers to make informed choices about, what may be a good next step for them. And certainly, there are some teachers who will do very, very well totally going on their own and being independent. And then there are other teachers who want that sense of community. They want someone who has already worked out the kinks with all the logistics and behind the scenes stuff. So certainly I'm not here to say that everyone will be a perfect fit for Storyhouse English or that, this is the best possible option for everybody. That's certainly not the case. So my goal in sharing this information is just to help people, decide, well, first of all, just what things they should consider when looking to, go for a new opportunity, but then also making sure that people know what we expect in Storyhouse and what the teachers can expect as well. So Matthew Reese, the founder of Storyhouse, started it actually last year. So this was before big changes started happening. And he had this vision of using meaningful conversation as a means for teaching English. So rather than, having set slides that say, here's the grammar rule, and, making sure we fit every single piece of a curriculum. Instead of that, it's much more fluid than that. So the vision is to build relationships with the students, build trust, practice storytelling, and kind of by happenstance learning English, right? So it's kind of like a sneaky way, like the kids are practicing English, and they are learning grammar and those types of things, but it's in a more natural way than a lot of programs and platforms currently do. So anyway, that was last year that Matthew had this vision. Matthew's uncle Jim and I started early in 2021 with teaching and kind of casting a vision and joining Matthew in, getting things really running and trying out different systems and working out the kinks. And now we are looking to grow our team. So we actually, a few weeks ago, kind of started putting out announcements like, hey, we're hiring. And we've had a lot of teachers reach out, which has been really, really exciting. This week, we're actually training the first set of new teachers who are coming on, which is awesome. Yes, it's
That's
very
great.
exciting. Yes. And we've just been so overwhelmed by just the quality of teachers who have come our way. And certainly not everybody has been a great fit. But there have been a lot of teachers who were like, where have you been? My goodness, you are amazing. And we're just so excited to, grow this thing with you. So I feel like I'm talking in circles, but I'm really excited about watching Story House grow, watching teachers grow in their roles within our platform. And so, like I said, it's not going to be a perfect fit for everybody, but for those who it is a good fit for, I think they'll find a new home in Story House, and it's just exciting for them. And it also offers comfort, because there's just so much changing right now, and to have something that you can kind of look to and say, this is what I'm working on now is really, really amazing.
Very good. I see some people in our chat box are a little bit
Yeah.
confused by the application because the application mentions Jesus. Do you want
Yeah.
to, in your own words, explain what that's about?
Yeah. So our platform, we are a collection of Christian teachers. Christianity is something that unites us. Unites us in our worldview and our morals. And I'm certainly not saying that people who are not Christians don't have morals or anything like that. It's just there's something special that unifies you when you believe in Jesus. And so that's kind of what we envision, is that this is the platform that, like I said, we focus on conversation and storytelling, but on a deeper level, that's something that unifies all of the teachers. So we can be praying for each other, just sharing ideas and just really connecting on a deeper level with one another.
Awesome. So I took some notes when I went to your Instagram page, and I watched about 30 minutes of your interview with Matthew. I didn't get all of it finished yet, but so here are some of the things I saw. The
Yeah.
qualifications to be a teacher is to be like an early adapter and innovator and good at like learning new systems, maybe a little bit flexible because it is a newer platform. They're looking for someone with experience on with ESL, teaching ESL online. And if you have WeChat connections, that's helpful. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say the applications that we've seen so far, that last piece that you mentioned, Evelyn, has been the biggest stumbling block for people, not for everybody, but a lot of times if we have had to turn somebody away, that has been the main reason. So with us being a startup, and with us not advertising overtly in China, we kind of depend on teachers bringing their own students, at least at this point. So we do expect teachers to already have connections off of any other teaching platform with their students. So that could be WeChat, it could be through email, or if there's some other method that I don't know about that teachers are using. So anyway, we do expect that because that's how we will grow as a business. And it also shows to us that you already have those relationships, and it's not like you're starting from scratch with these students. Now, certainly you may get new students along the way, especially because we do have a student referral program. So like right now, this could change, but right now, let's say that, Sandy's son, Bob, tells his friend Tom about our classes, and then Tom takes a trial class and signs up. Bob will end up getting a couple of free classes out of that. So we do have a referral program in that way for students and for the parents of the students. So it is possible to grow in that way. But we do at this point expect teachers to have their own students. And it's not like they have to have 12 that they are 100% sure are going to sign up every single week right out the gate. We have like a 3-month trial or probationary kind of period for teachers that they can build up to that. So we don't expect it to just be like you are ready to hit the ground running right away. Teachers can build up to that, but we just have to feel confident, and the teacher needs to feel confident that he or she can achieve that within 3 months. So that's kind of, I would say that's been a little bit of a sticking point with some people, but like I said, we've hired several teachers already who have fit the bill beautifully, and their students, are now really excited to get started with them. So there are a lot of teachers who will fit this description. And for those who don't, I encourage them, keep an eye on what we're doing, because at some point in the future, if we do have a lot of students, like if somehow the word gets out and we have a ton of students and we need some teachers who don't have those connections already, we will be making an announcement at that point. We just can't really say for sure that that will happen or when that will happen. But it's something that we've definitely thought about, because we've seen so many amazing applications from people who that's the only piece that they're missing. So I would say to those people, just, stay aware of what we're doing. I will certainly make a big announcement. Like you won't be able to miss it. Probably mostly on Instagram, if we are able to bring on teachers without a student base in the future. But for right now, that is important.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think of how a year ago I interviewed the CEO of Your Teachable Moment. And then now a year later, like I taught my first class, but then their platform was just starting off. Now a year later, I'm starting to teach for them more. So I can't help but think that we might have another interview in a year and see all the updates of what's been going on with this platform. Now I have a few people that are a little bit confused in the chat box, and I think it's a good reflection of maybe how a lot of people will feel watching this playback and everything.
Yeah.
So someone's, I'll just put it up. Kelly said, so this is ESL and not like Christian Outschool?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a really great question. So, yeah, I'm not totally sure how to answer that. I would say maybe think something in the middle.
Okay, so one thing to know is that this is conversational English. So it's not, one thing that was mentioned in your video that we haven't necessarily mentioned in this video is that this is not necessarily you have 25 slides and you have 25 minutes and you have to do this and that and this and that. But it's conversational. One thing in my notes that Matthew mentioned is it's about conversation, preparation, and observation.
Yeah.
So you guys mentioned something like in passing that I wasn't sure exactly what you meant by it. And that was like when you're having a conversation and then it sort of comes to a standstill, you guys have maybe slides or stories or something to work off from, possibly? I don't know.
Yeah, so that is something that's totally up to each individual teacher. So I think maybe what would be the most helpful way for me to explain this would be to kind of paint the picture for what a typical class would look like.
Yes, please do.
Yeah,
yes.
I think
Tell me.
clear it up a lot.
That's what I want. Yeah.
Yes. So with Storyhouse English, it's a lot more flexible than other platforms in that if there's a certain piece of a typical class that you don't get to on a certain day, that's okay. If a parent has expressed that he or she would like you to focus on something in particular, that's okay. But let me just paint a picture of what a typical class would look like. So for example, I have a student and most of my students are more beginner level. That just tends to be more of my wheelhouse. That's where I connect well with the students, and I'm really good at like kind of getting their confidence to a different level so they can start speaking more. Whereas there are some teachers like Matthew who do really well with more of like philosophical conversations with the older, more advanced students. So anyway, but just to show you like what my students would typically do in a class. So before the class, my students will typically write sentences. I usually, since they're more beginner level, would say 5 to 7 sentences. I know for Matthew's students, I think he says like 12-ish sentences. But anyway, the students would choose a topic, write sentences before class, and then when we get to class, in the first part of the class, we are just catching up, right? We are just chatting about, what their life has looked like since we last met, anything new or exciting, sharing stories of what's been happening. So that's like the first part, just very casual, very conversational. Then we move into covering those sentences that the student prepared ahead of time. So like for my students, since they're more beginner level, I'll have my student go one sentence at a time. So my student would read, kind of recite the sentence to me, and then I typically will type in the chat box the sentence with any corrections, and I'll draw the student's attention to some corrections, right? And then maybe ask some follow-up questions. So we kind of just go sentence by sentence. Whereas with Matthew, since his students tend to be a little more upper level, he would just have them go like, sharing that paragraph or whatever, and maybe he'll interrupt a couple times. So anyway, we're just kind of helping the student with telling that story, with making any kind of corrections that we think we need to make for that student. And then we just kind of discuss it a little bit. And then we move into reading, of course, time permitting. So we, at Storyhouse English, we have kind of a pool of reading resources that we can share, but teachers are totally flexible. They can use any other resources that they have the permission to use and they want to use. I anticipate some teachers will write their own little stories, but I've primarily found some free readers online. I have some books that I bought from yard sales that have been really helpful. And so for the last bit of class, you typically would have your student read. So maybe that's a short book, maybe it's just a short story, and then you talk about it. So just to sum it all up, it's kind of, your student would prepare something ahead of time before the class, you chit chat, you go over what you've prepared, what your student has prepared, and then you do some kind of reading. So it's, so yes, the sentences are in a story form, Naomi asked. They can be. With my more beginner level students, I just kind of have them choose a topic, and then they're all just related to the topic. They don't necessarily paint a whole story. It's not like first this, then that. For example, my one student wanted to write about her brother, and so the sentences were like, my brother's name is Tommy. He likes ice cream. It's not necessarily a story, but
Yeah.
but some of the more upper level students would definitely write it in more of a story format. So it really just depends on the level of your students and what they're able to do.
Okay, so I'm going to say back to you what I heard you say, and you'll
Sure.
tell me any corrections. All right, so what I heard you say is the student comes prepared with something they've already written.
Right.
And the teacher has them read it, and you can practice grammar and talk about it. And then if there's time permitting, then you may have some reading practice. Are you able to share your screen?
So the platforms that we use are either Skype or Zoom. It's totally up to you, whichever you prefer. And then we have, in Chinese, we have directions that you can send to your students' parents, so that they understand how to access and use those different platforms. So since we're using Skype or Zoom, it's very easy to share a screen. And I actually have been using Skype because I found it to be really helpful that Skype saves your conversations from meeting to meeting, or like anything in the chat box, I should say. And so you can easily scroll back up and be like, oh yeah, we did talk about that last time. And it's very easy to drop a story in the chat box, and then they can just pop it up on their screen. Like if you have a little file, like a screenshot or something. So I found Skype to be really, really good for Storyhouse, but I know some that prefer to use Zoom, and some that even do a combination of the two. Now, I don't know that I would recommend doing that if you're, I don't know, I would prefer just to stay all on one, but it's totally up to the teacher. We're super duper flexible with the teacher preferences, and we know that a lot of our teachers are very flexible with the parents' preferences as well.
Very good. Teacher Kelly asked, so we can bring our VIPKid students?
If you've got those connections, yeah.
It's students that you've made connections with, that you're friends with on WeChat, right?
Yeah, WeChat, email, however you've connected with those students. And at this point, since parents are not able to buy more classes on VIPKid, we really don't feel like that's an icky thing at all to be like,
Yeah.
hey, why don't you try out our platform? Because they've already purchased things. Like if they've already purchased those classes on VIPKid, they're probably just going to want to use up those classes before they come to Storyhouse anyway. So anyway, it doesn't really feel like we're competing or like stealing these students. These students aren't going to be able to use these platforms in a very short period of time. Like it's no surprise to any of your viewers, I think, that these things are going to be closing, but Storyhouse will not be closing because we are US based. So it's kind of, for a lot of teachers and students, I think it's a perfect next step because we are still going to be able to conduct these classes on our platform, even though the other companies are closing their doors.
Okay. So what I am hearing you say is that the reason that Jesus is mentioned in the application is because this is a collective of Christian teachers.
Right.
Some people in the chat box seemed kind of confused about that, and maybe it is confusing at first. But yeah, that it's a community, and that I also heard Matthew mention that they may have in the future like groups of 8 teachers together, so that you have community, you have people to bounce ideas off of, or communicate with, or pray for, or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
Also, you guys may have trainings, like possibly with counselors, about like how to do conversations better. And then let me see. Matthew mentioned that everyone will be given a business email, like for communication, when like if you become a teacher on the platform, you'll be given a business email for communication. And then I wrote down that one of the goals is to have like a tight-knit teacher community that you guys can support one another. So this is kind of like taking the idea of like a lot of teachers are going off on their own and tutoring one-on-one. This is kind of doing that in a group setting.
Yes.
So you can make friends and have community and support each other with ideas and teaching ideas and stuff like that. And
Exactly.
so at the time that you interviewed Matthew, I'm not sure how long ago that was, but there were 5 teachers, and you guys were looking to eventually fill up 40 spaces for teachers.
Yeah.
So how has that progressed since that video?
So since then, we are bringing on 8 new teachers. So we are growing, but we're not trying to grow too fast. So the goal, like the end goal, would be to have those 40 teachers. But if it takes us several months, a year, whatever, however long it takes us to get to there, we'll be patient, because we don't want to bring on people who don't really agree with what we're doing, or people who aren't really an early adopter type, like we don't want to just bring on people who don't really want to grow with us. We don't want just people who are like, oh, let me just try out any new platform that I see. So we are being pretty selective with who we bring on. And so, so we are growing. I mean, to bring on 8 teachers in this month or so that we've been, interviewing and that sort of thing is really, really exciting. And I think that's probably a really healthy pace to go at. I think if we were bringing on too many, people might kind of slip through the cracks, or it may just be overwhelming to us. But it's nice to bring on a group like that, because, for example, with our trainings that we're doing this week with the new teachers, we can kind of do 2 groups of training, 2 groups of teachers in the training, so they can get to know each other. They're kind of starting at the same time, and so they have that in common with each other. And so I think the pace that we're going at is really ideal. And I'm just excited to, continue to gradually bring on more teachers as we see fit.
Definitely. Teacher Kelly was wondering if for that story reading section, if they're allowed to use Christian textbooks.
Yeah, I would say as long as it's something that the copyright doesn't prohibit you from using, yes, I would say so. I know that Matthew, for example, he has typed up or transcribed different stories. Actually, he has kind of transposed, yes, I teach English, different stories from the Bible, like different parables. And so, like, with some of his students, so he'll, the loaves and fishes, or, he'll have a story that the student is reading, and the student may not understand where it fits within the whole, Bible or anything like that, but we're kind of sharing those stories piece by piece. So I would say, yes, there's nothing that says that you can't use things like Christian textbooks. I would say just be careful with what time you're spending, because if it's a textbook, my first thought is that's going to take a really long time. So maybe just like smaller sections of a story, maybe
Yeah.
even I've done sometimes, like, we'll read the first half of a story in one class and we'll pick it up in the second class. But yeah, as long as you have permission, there's nothing copyright wise. I don't see anything wrong with that.
The other thing I have in my notes that stood out to me in your interview with Matthew is that the classes are 50 minutes long. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Most of them. So there is the 25-minute option, and actually most of my students do the 25-minute option, but that is rare. I would say more of the students who are coming to us typically are taking those 50-minute classes, because it's conversational, and 25 minutes goes really, really fast if you're having really good conversations with your student. But again, it depends on who you are bringing on as the teacher. Like, your students, the parents, and some parents just don't have the time to devote 50 minutes in an evening for their student to have a conversation with you. So yeah, I would say it's more common for them to take the 50-minute option, but we do have the 25-minute option as well.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So, and do you write feedback?
Feedback, we do expect you to write some kind of feedback, but it's totally up to you how you write the feedback. So we have a feedback system that you can choose to use if you want to, that Matthew's actually in the process of changing it a little bit right now, but it's through our website. It's like a hidden page on our website, that it like automatically will send the email when you're finished with it. For some of my students, prefer just to type my own email to the parents and just send it off that way. So it's totally up to the teachers. We expect teachers to send something, but whether that's a couple sentences, whether it's just a couple bullet, it's totally up to the teacher. I think that's one of the main things I hope people will take out of this conversation, is that there's a lot of freedom and flexibility with Storyhouse. Like, we are a collective of teachers, and we share ideas and resources and these systems that are already set up. But ultimately, you have a lot of flexibility as the teacher.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Rebecca F says, are they group classes or one-on-one?
That is a really good question. I'm surprised I didn't mention that. They are one-on-one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we've been implying that they're one-on-one, but I didn't ask yet if there are group classes, so I'm glad she asked that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know in
Yeah.
the beginning, Matthew did some, like 2 students to a teacher, but I think he's trying to kind of veer away from that and just focus on the one-on-one. So I would say that's pretty much what we're doing at this point, is one-on-one.
Very good.
Yeah, good question.
Alicia said, will you be looking for students from other countries, not just China?
We are totally open to that. I would say we're not really looking for students at all right now, because the teachers are bringing them. And right now our systems are more geared toward Chinese parents. Like, for example, our website has the option that you can switch the website into Chinese. The reviews are in Chinese. Our helpful resources for the parents, like to help them get on Skype or Zoom, those are in Chinese. So we're not necessarily set up to support other languages at this point, but we're certainly open to it for the future. So I would say right now we don't have any students from other countries that I'm aware of, but that's certainly not something that we're opposed to in the future.
Okay. We have one person in the chat box who is concerned because the Chinese government is watching everything that happens on WeChat, obviously. What would you say to that concerned person?
Yeah, I totally understand the reason for concern there. So I would say that is something that we discuss with our teachers in the training. So if that is something that you just don't think you could ever, like, if it makes you way too nervous and you don't see a way that could ever work, like, maybe this isn't the right platform for you. But we do acknowledge that, there is a certain element of like hesitation there. So that's something that we definitely talk about with our hired teachers. But we just first and foremost want to first and foremost want to make sure that teachers are a good fit for the platform in general, and then we can kind of delve into how to kind of navigate that sort of thing.
Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'm all out of questions. So what have I forgotten to ask you? Is there anything that you haven't
Mm.
mentioned that you would like to say? We haven't mentioned pay because I don't feel like that's like the main thing, but I know people will come to this video asking like
Yeah.
what the pay rate is.
Yeah,
So,
so the pay, it's kind of like a scale. It depends on how much you are teaching. I figured you would ask that, so I actually have it pulled up
yes.
on my phone.
Well, the
So
way you said on the video, but I'm gonna let you answer
yeah,
that.
yeah. And of course, this may change at some point, but as of right now, the base pay is $24 per hour. Um, and then it goes up. So, like, for example, if you're teaching 14 hours per week or 56 hours total in the month, it goes up to $25. If you're teaching 18 hours in a week, it goes up to $27. So, a bit of a jump there. If you're teaching 24 hours in a week, it goes up to $28. If you're teaching 30 hours in a week, it goes up to $29. And then there are some additional, little things here and there. Like, for example, if you are teaching those shorter classes, we acknowledge that there's maybe a little bit more prep time and a little bit of time with feedback, so you would get an extra dollar for each of those. And then, if there are trial classes, like students, their first trial class is free, but the teacher still gets paid for it. And if there's like a referral, like a student, is coming on, like, you still get paid for that. So anyway, all that to say, I think teachers are very fairly rewarded for their efforts on Storyhouse. And then there is the possibility in the future for additional opportunities to create resources and that sort of thing, that may be opportunities for additional income. So with us being a startup, it's one of those things, like, we don't know what we don't know. So we're not sure exactly what kinds of awesome ideas teachers will bring. But, maybe a teacher will try to offer something different and we'll be able to charge a certain amount for it. Or, so we really see this as just like the starting point for teachers. But I think in terms of pay, it's very competitive. But we don't like to lead with the pay, even though the pay is really good. We don't like to lead with it because we first and foremost want teachers who are on board with the mission of what we're doing and with building that community and trying to see this thing really grow. So the pay is very good, but first and foremost, we want teachers to be kind of early adopters to what we're doing.
Very good. And I know the Chinese government is cracking down on WeChat and it's cracking down on tutoring.
Mm-hmm.
And me personally, my response to the people, I have someone sending me a message on Facebook like, I don't know how to comment on the video, but how is the government going to allow this? My response is time will tell how you guys will be flexible with what happens in the future. You're probably going to roll with the punches, and I can only imagine how the company will evolve and the platform will change over time. And right now you're doing one thing and maybe a year from now it'll look different, and it is what it is, right? That would be my answer to that. I don't know what you would
Yeah.
say. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard that concern a lot. Like, people have been asking, how are you getting around these regulations and that sort of thing. I've actually spoken with quite a few people in China on video chat who have different businesses, and their main answer to me has been, like, when I've been asking, like, do you think it's okay that we're doing this, that sort of thing. To sum up their responses, it's like China has bigger fish to fry than this group of potentially 40 teachers having conversations with kids. You know what I mean? They have bigger fish to fry, and the regulations that China has been, bringing down have been targeting the companies, the Chinese companies. They have not specifically been targeting the parents. So, like, the fines or anything that they've been threatening have been going toward the companies, the Chinese companies. So that's another way that we feel, I mean, we can never have full confidence because we have to have an open hand with everything, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of something that has been reassuring to us, is that we're a small operation, we're based in the US, and those regulations are really geared more toward Chinese companies, not even Chinese individuals. Because can you imagine them trying to regulate the number of people who are trying to have these classes? It's much easier for them to try to regulate the companies than
Yeah.
individual people in China. So I hope that offers some kind of reassurance. Of course, it's not 100% reassurance because anything could
Well,
change. But
I would say too, as I've been reading articles and I've been trying to research and I've been trying to take all the hearsay and figure out where are the facts and all this, and what I've been discovering along the way is a lot of people don't understand why are the bigger companies affected by, you know, the weekend and holiday regulations, but the smaller companies aren't. And it's because the government specifically targets the bigger companies, and one of their main concerns with some of this is how much money these companies are making and how profitable they are and stuff. Also, I would say Beijing is looking at cracking down on companies that are based in Beijing. And so the fact that Storyhouse isn't based in Beijing, that is an advantage. I would say if this was a big company in Beijing, you would have big worries since this is basically an independent collaborative of teachers. Now, will you guys eventually be affected if WeChat is shut off from us or whatever? We will see in the future, but you guys are good at rolling with the punches, and we'll just see what happens in the future. But yes, so this is a very small collaborative of teachers. I would say most of the people that watch this video probably aren't going to be maybe the right fit for this because this is just a small platform just starting off. But who knows, there may be 1, 2, 10 teachers that watch this and this ends up being the right fit for them. And that would be the purpose for me making this video, is for those few teachers that are interested. I would say too, when you're starting something new, don't depend all of your income for paying all of your bills on your brand new startup thing.
I agree.
So if all of your money is coming from VIPKid right now, and then you're totally depending on this new thing that you're starting, you might want to have another income as well. So I would say, let's say you work for VIPKid and OutSchool, and then you also want to be trying this as you're phasing out of VIPKid. Then as this becomes a bigger thing, you may phase out of OutSchool in the future. That's just my 2 cents as far as focusing on finances. I recently put a survey on my YouTube channel. 90 people responded. I was surprised.
Wow.
And I was a little bit disturbed and sad to see that about 30% of the people are fully relying on VIPKid for their income to pay their bills. And I would say now is the time to pivot. Now is the time to diversify. Now is the time to find your new thing. You may be watching this and you're just finding out this information, and it may be something you pass on to someone that will be a good fit. I don't know.
That's true.
So Kelly asks, are there minimum hours?
So we do expect teachers to teach at least 12 hours per week or 48 hours in the month. I make the distinction because we understand that you may go on vacation, or maybe you'll focus more on certain weeks of the month. So yes, that is the expectation. Like we said, we don't expect your very first week teaching on Storyhouse that you would have a full schedule. We have that 3-month period where you can kind of figure out what works and get into the swing of things. So yeah, I would say 12 hours in a week average is what we would expect from teachers. And then of course, like I said, the pay does increase the more that you are teaching. So that's kind of a nice perk as well.
Very good, very good. Naomi says, I have 12 regulars that I teach at VIPKid. Since I've taught, some I've taught since 2017. But I'm not on WeChat and I don't have contact with them outside of VIPKid. Wish I did. Is there anything you would like to say to Naomi? I don't know. Advice on getting connected? I don't know.
It's entirely up to the teachers if they would like to try. I know some people lately have been having a hard time starting a WeChat account because there have been some changes. But if possible, maybe she could get connected on email through, with those students. I know when I was first getting connected with parents, I did have a WeChat. I think I got my WeChat in 2017, and I would just leave it at the end of my feedback. Like I'd say, here's my WeChat ID, or on WeChat, you can actually scan a QR code. Like in your account, you can hold up your QR code and people can scan it. So that is possible. Now, do I know for sure that VIPKid is okay with that? No, I don't. But I don't think, have made an official announcement that I'm aware of. I think they
They've always
understand.
been fine with it.
Yeah,
It was
I think. Yeah, go ahead.
the reason that I didn't do WeChat was because VIPKid explicitly said not to, and I only taught like 2 classes for them, but it made me go, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But VIPKid, I've worked for them 4 years. They have never said anything about you're not allowed to be on WeChat, and there are plenty of teachers that are. So yeah, we have online teacher dude. Hello.
Hey, Tim.
Oh, yeah. What's up, Tim?
Hello,
So yeah. I think that's all I have. Let me check my notes of what questions I was supposed to ask you. See what those were.
Love it.
Oh yeah, 10 questions I didn't ask yet. Just kidding. So yeah. All right, the last one is thank you so much for coming on my channel. That's the last
That's the best question. No. Thank you so much for having me, Evelyn, and thank you for serving the teachers so faithfully and for helping them figure out what's next. I think that's so important, and it's important that people look for new things and consider new things, and if they're Christians, that they pray about new things, right? And kind of deciding what may be next. And yeah, so I appreciate you hosting this as well.
I just want to say real quick that there's some people that are going to watch this and misinterpret this. And I realize that, right? In fact, before this video, I prayed with Christina just that God would give us the right words to say to communicate correctly what this platform is and what it stands for. Because some people are incorrectly assuming things about this platform, thinking that it's things that it's not. I just want you guys to know that this is not a huge platform that's going to be hiring thousands of teachers, but this is a small collaborative of Christian teachers that want to teach English, and I think it's really cool, and that's why I wanted to share the frequently asked questions on my channel, and that's what it was. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you guys so much for watching. All right.
Absolutely. And I think you said you would put the link to apply in your video description. Is that right?
Yes, it already is there. Yep. And I have the link to apply in the video description and the link to your YouTube channel to subscribe. So once you subscribe to Christina, follow her on Instagram and subscribe to me as well.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Okay. Thank you so much
for tuning in.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.